Page off.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So I'm here to do my February wrap-up. I read a lot of books this month, so hopefully this isn't too long. I already filmed this once, and it was way too long. So I'll do my best to shorten it. Thankfully, I already talked about a lot of them on another video. I read the entire Little House collection, and I reviewed it in my one of my last videos, so go check that out. But anyway, here are the books besides Little House that I've read. The first one was Becoming Free Indeed by Ginger Volo. I gave this 4 stars. I was a huge Ancient Kids and Counting fan back in the day. You know, it was one of like the first reality shows that was out, and I'm into reality TV. So, she came out with a book, and I read it, and generally speaking, I thought it was pretty good. I know a lot of people were upset about it because she wasn't like trashing her parents, but I didn't expect her to. I mean, it's literally her spiritual journey from figuring out that her parents' beliefs were problematic. I mean, I'm not saying that her beliefs now aren't problematic, but, you know, it wasn't a memoir to trash her parents. So I can't get upset with her for it, and I don't expect her to. She's a human. I think that's the problem with reality TV. For other people. People just cannot see them as human beings, and they want them to say what they want them to say, and if they don't say it, they're not happy. So, I thought she was very nice in this book. So, 4 stars. Next is a book I DNF'd, Owner of a Lonely Heart by Eva Carter. I basically DNF'd this because it's basically about a girl who is meeting her father for the first time. She has cancer. She asks him for help because I guess she's going to have treatment in his area. So she asks if she can live with him. And I gave it a chance because it sounded interesting. But the minute I found out why she was just meeting her dad, I was like, nope, you suck. And you don't deserve redemption. So bye-bye. I would literally spend the entire book hating him and not enjoying the, I guess, relationship develop because I hate him. So, no, I'm done. So there's that. Next is These Things Hidden by Heather Gudenkauf. I gave this 4 stars. I got this through Krista from Books and Jams. This one is basically about, Allison Glenn. She basically goes to jail or prison, I should say, for something I won't spoil, and her family pretty much disowns her, and her younger sister is kind of left in her shadow and left to sort of pick up the pieces of what happened. And there's also a couple of other characters that connect to the story, but I won't say how they connect because that would be spoiling. But one of them is the adopted mother of a little boy, and another is a young college girl. So, yeah, there's that. I can't say any more because it'll spoil it, but it was a really great book, and the way these characters sort of intertwine, how they have everything to do with each other is incredible. So, it was a great book, but trigger warnings for, well, some death. So, yeah. Next is The Day the World Came to Town by Jim DeFede. I gave this 5 stars. This is recommended to me through Gloria Z. Thompson on BookTube. And basically it's about, it takes place September 11th when a bunch of planes had to land wherever they could find a place to land because they didn't want planes unaccounted for in the sky. So it's about the passengers that landed in Gander, Canada, and how the people of Gander basically banded together to take care of them, and how basically they had like long-lasting friendships after the fact. And it was really cool because you kind of got to see some of their stories. Like, they pick certain ones to kind of tell us their story from the beginning of the Gander adventure to the end, and kind of how they all stayed friends after. My particular favorite was a couple who adopted a little girl, and before they were leaving Gander, they kind of got as close as they could get to Prince Edward Island because the mom was a huge fan of Anne of Green Gables. So, I love that. But yeah, it was kind of a narrative nonfiction book that kept me engaged the whole time, which is not a thing that usually happens to me with nonfiction. It takes a special nonfiction to get me to engage. So, yeah, I love this book and the sense of community. So there's that one. Next is All the Dangerous Things by Stacy Willingham. I gave this 5 stars. I got this through Book Talk, etc. podcast. I can't remember which of the hosts recommended it. But I loved this book. It's basically about a mom whose son disappears, and she basically stops sleeping after that. She's always had, like, sleep problems. And once her son disappears, like, she can't go to sleep, like, at all. She'll, like, have, like, little, I forgot what you called it, like, micro sleep, where she'll sleep for a few minutes, or, like, blackout or whatever. And so there's, like, the unreliable narrator trope of it all. And it kind of goes back to her childhood and trauma that happened with her family, her mom and her sisters. Character death in this book too. So trigger warnings there, but, like, she's worried that she might have done something to her baby in her sleep, because she's a perpetual sleepwalker. And so she kind of teams up with this true crime podcaster, and they're trying to crack the case together. So, yeah, it was an interesting read, because you never know, like, who done it. It could be her and she doesn't know it. I mean, I was engaged till the very end, so it was a really good book. Going. Next is Yellow Wife by Sadiqa Johnson. I gave this 5 stars. Recommended by Ashley from Bookish Realm. I'm going to read the description for this one just because it's complicated. Born on a plantation in Charles City, Virginia, Phoebe Brown was promised her freedom on her 18th birthday. But when her birthday finally comes around, instead of the idyllic life she was hoping for with her true love, she finds herself thrown into the bowels of slavery at the infamous Devil's Half Acre, a jail where slaves are broken, tortured, and sold every day. Forced to become the mistress of the brutal man who owns the jail, Phoebe faces the ultimate sacrifice to protect her heart in this powerful, thrilling story of one slave's fight for freedom. So yeah, first of all the trigger warnings for every form of bad thing to happen to a person, child death, all of it. Just know that going in. I mean, it's slavery. It's bad. And this jail is pretty bad, but I mean, the resilience in this, or the will to survive, I guess, in this woman was incredible. I mean, especially the way she started out. She was promised her freedom because she's called Yellow Wife because she's biracial. Her father was the plantation owner, and yeah. So she had some, I guess, she was treated better because she was his kid. So she didn't quite know what everybody else faced in slavery until she had to really not be the favorite. So yeah, it was a hard read, but it was definitely a book I'm glad I did read. And I'm looking forward to reading Sadiqa Johnson's next book. So, next is Homegoing by Ya Jessie. I gave this 4 stars. I've been hearing about this forever, but the most recent recommendation was from Katie Cobb from Currently Reading podcast. I'll read the description for this one. 2 half-sisters, Afia and Essie, are born into different villages in 18th century Ghana. Afia is married off to an Englishman and lives in comfort in the palatial rooms of Cape Coast Castle. Unbeknownst to Afia, her sister Essie is imprisoned beneath her in the castle's dungeons, sold with thousands of others into the Gold Coast's booming slave trade, and shipped off to America, where her children and grandchildren will be raised in slavery. One thread of homegoing follows Ifia's descendants through centuries of warfare in Ghana as the Fante and Asante nations wrestle with the slave trade and British colonization. The other thread follows Essie and her children into America. From the plantations of the South to the Civil War and the Great Migration, from the coal mines of Pratt City, Alabama, to the jazz clubs and dope houses of 20th century Harlem, right up through the present day, homegoing makes history visceral and captures with singular and stunning immediacy how the memory of captivity came to be inscribed in the soul of a nation. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. Like, it's basically talking about these two sisters and their stories and their descendants. It's kind of like a book of short stories almost, because each chapter is a different person. That's kind of why I rated it down a little bit. Not because the stories were bad. They were all, it's just that you're getting into one person's story and then all of a sudden you're done. So, like, some stories are more interesting than others. Put it that way. Although it is still really interesting to read them all because they all connect. And in some of them, you do see the previous descendants, like a grandparent or something. So it was still a really interesting read to see how they all connected. And, I mean, you're, like, rushing through history because you're going generation to generation. Like, you're starting way before the Civil War and you're ending in, like, what, 2009 or something? I'm not sure. But there was internet. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. Next is The Blackout Book Club by Amy Lynn Green. I gave this 5 stars. I got this one through Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails. Basically, it's about Avis, who is asked by her brother to take care of his library, or the library that he works at, while he's in the war. And even though she's not really into books, she agrees. And the library is about to be closed down, so she lies and says that she's going to start a book club. And so she somehow gathers, like, these random people to join in a book club. A single mom, a young, like, war worker type person, and the owner of the library herself, this, like, older, wealthy, like, cranky single lady. And gradually more people start joining. And it's really interesting. Like, the kids in the story are cute from the single mom. And she's basically escaping an abusive husband. It's all really interesting how they all kind of come together. They're, like, an unlikely set of people that become, like, really good friends. And there's a little bit of a romance in it, too. I like books where there's a romance, but it's not, like, the main part of the story. Like, I like the little glimpses into it, but it's not, like, the whole thing. So that was really fun to watch. So, yeah, it was a really good book. It's not, like, one of the most exciting World War II historical fictions, but it was definitely warm and fuzzy in parts. So I enjoyed it a lot. Next is Where Is My Mummy by Maggie Hartley. I gave this 5 stars. I'm not trying to speak British. It's just the title. Maggie Hartley is one of the foster care authors that I read. And this story is about the daughter that she pretty much adopted. She didn't officially adopt her, but she permanently fostered her after her parents died in a car accident. We knew from her other books, from other kids she talked about that she fostered, that Louisa's parents died in a car accident and she took her in, but we didn't know the details, and yikes. I did not know how bad that accident was and how bad Louisa was injured, so it was an interesting read to see the journey. So yeah, there's that book. Next is All the Broken Places by John Boyne. I gave this 5 stars. I found this through Sarah's Bookshelves live podcast. I read The Boy in the Striped Pajamas last month, so this is the sequel. It's about Gretel. In the past and present, she's Bruno's older sister. In the first book, Bruno calls her the hopeless case. So yeah, it was interesting to see her as a funny old woman. But yeah, you kind of go back and forth between present day and then her childhood. So you kind of see how she grew up and how she had a difficult relationship with her own son. Whoa, it's windy out there. Yeah, so she had a difficult relationship with her own son, and kind of she's like battling things that happened in the last book. It's hard to talk about it without spoiling the book. But in the present day, she is living in the same apartment that she's lived in for years, and there's a family that moves in next into the apartment next door, I think, or near them. And there's a little boy, and she wants to help him because he's in trouble. And she makes some questionable decisions. I mean, morally questionable. I was okay with them, but others might not be. So, yeah. All in all, I really like this book. So, yeah. Next is The Lost Year, a survival story of the Ukrainian famine by Catherine Marsh. I give this 5 stars. I got this through watching Amanda from The Curly Reader. This is basically a dual timeline story. It's the present day timeline takes place in COVID times, which could be triggering for some because some people aren't ready to read about 2020 in a book. I personally don't mind just because it's kind of interesting to sort of see how other people dealt with it. And, I mean, it's kind of just neat to relate. You're like, oh, I had to do Zoom stuff too. Oh, I had to, it was kind of, I don't know, I don't mind. But he's basically in isolation with his mom and his great-grandmother, who's 100 years old, and he gets punished because he's playing too much Zelda on his Switch, and he also accidentally almost shoots his 100-year-old grandma with a bow and arrow. Yeah, that happened. So, he's punished, and his mom is like, you need to help grandma, like, Gigi, actually. You need to help Gigi, like, put away her things, or separate her things, and he starts finding, like, he finds this old photograph, and it starts a story of how, like, the Ukrainian famine, and how people in her family dealt with it. And yeah, it's all this Soviet history I never knew about. I mean, Stalin, she called him Papa Stalin. Like, it was odd. Like, one of the girls in the story called him Papa Stalin. I'm really trying not to spoil anything, but yeah, it was just an interesting read. I loved it so much that I got my own copy. I actually borrowed it from the library, thinking that I wasn't, going to read it again, but I probably will, so I ended up getting the audio for myself after I returned it. Yeah, the history of the Ukrainian famine was really hard to read, but I like reading about different kinds of history I didn't know about, so I love this book. Next is We Deserve Monuments by Jazz Hammonds. I'm not sure how to pronounce this. I gave this 4 stars. I heard about this through the Reading Through Life podcast. I can't remember which host. Basically, it's about a girl named Avery, and her family moved back to Georgia, I think, to basically take care of her dying grandmother. And her mom and her grandma don't really get along, so there's, like, family secrets there, and she finds out, like, she's trying to figure out why they don't get along, so, and they won't talk about it, and she meets 2 friends. She makes friends with Jade and Simone, and her and Simone, there's a thing with them, eventually. Romantic thing. But she also kind of finds out, like, I guess the racist history that goes back to the little town that they live in, and it's not pretty. Trigger warnings galore. There's also, like, a unsolved murder with Jade's mom, like, who killed Jade's mom. That's why I gave it 4 stars, because I think I know what they're implying happened in the end, but I'm not sure. So somebody could verify that for me. If anybody's read this book, that would be great, because I'm confused. So that's what rated it down. But overall, I enjoyed it. I mean, Mama Letty, the grandma, is prickly, and she swears all the time, and she was hard to like at first, but by the end you felt for her. So, yeah, I like this book a lot. Next, we have Marmee by Sarah Miller. I rated this 5 stars, and I also reviewed it in a separate video, so I will just say that it is Little Women through Marmee's perspective. And move on. Next is Still Life by Louise Penny. I gave this 4 stars. Yes, I finally caved and joined the Louise Penny hype. I'm starting from the beginning. I'm currently waiting for book 2 very impatiently. Truly though, I think what attracts people to this series is Three Pines itself, the village, and like the people and all of that, because I wasn't as interested in the mystery as I was with just the town itself. The mystery was was good. Basically, an artist named, Jane is killed, an older lady who is like into art. And they're basically trying to solve her murder. And the interesting thing about the murder is that some of Jane's paintings actually helped them solve who killed her. So there's a lot of art in this book. And so that was really cool. But really, like, I wasn't as interested in the mystery as I was interested in the personal lives of the people. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to continue this series. Yeah, I liked Armand Gamache. Next is A Little Hope by Ethan Joella. I gave this 3 stars. Although, honestly, I think I mostly gave it 3 stars to be generous, because I just did not care. I'm sorry. Like, I was not very much into this. I was into, like, basically it starts out with this guy who is, like, a father, and he's got cancer, and he could die, and he has a little girl named Addie and, a wife. And you think it's going to be about him, but then it starts kind of veering off into other people in the town. Some are connected to them, some are not. And you kind of see them connect to other people in the town. But, like, I don't know, there were some chapters where I just didn't care about what happened to those people, because I wanted to get back to this family, and it was just, I just basically finished it because I wanted to know what happened to them. But I didn't really care that much about the rest, and, like, the rest of it was depressing, too. It just felt like the book where one bad thing after another happened, I'm like, I don't like this book. So I'm not sure I'll read the next one that he wrote. I had it on a waiting list, but maybe I'm just not into his writing style. A lot of people are. It's just not my thing. Anyway, next is Meet Claudie by Brit Bennett. I gave this 4 stars. This is an American Girl book. I did not know that Brit Bennett was writing an American Girl series. But apparently she is. This podcast that I listen to, it's called Dolls of Our Lives. They're going through all the American Girl books, and they covered this one, and I found it in my library, so I read it. It was a quick read. Basically, Claudie is living in the 1920s in Harlem. She lives in a boarding house where everybody's an artist, and she's like, so what's my talent? She's trying to figure out what she's good at. And then basically they're going to lose the boarding house because they can't pay the rent. So, yeah. She's trying to help them pay the rent. And it ends kind of so there could be another book, because nothing gets really resolved in this first book. So, have to wait for book 2. But I loved Claudie and her family and all the boarders. So, it was a great start to a good series. Next is, the last 2 books are the Vanderbeekers books by Karina Yan Glazer. I read the first 2 last year. I'm trying to finish the series. I gave the Vanderbeekers to the Rescue 3 stars, and the Vanderbeekers Lost and Found 4 stars. I can't decide whether I enjoy this or not. I'm compelled to continue because I like the kids in general and I just kind of want to see where it goes. So I'm going to finish the series, but sometimes I don't want what they do to turn out well, I guess. Or I don't think it necessarily has to turn out well. Like, sometimes I want things to go badly for them because they do too much, I guess. Like, they get in trouble, or they do things that they should get in more trouble for, in my personal opinion. Like, it's just a lot. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too critical because I'm reading this from an adult perspective now. Whereas if I read some other books from my childhood, I'm less critical. I don't know. Maybe I'll go into like another series review of these books and go into spoilers for anybody who's actually read them, because I am dying to talk about these. And I can't because I have to be vague. Anyway, those are the books that I read in February. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys in my next video. Bye.
Speech on. Stop recording video.